Hey everybody, this is Rory Francis and you're watching another episode of Igniting American Manufacturing. And I talk about a lot of things on this show related to manufacturing. And one of the things I talk about is workforce development and the trifecta that makes that work, and that's academia, that's industry and government. We're all working in concert. Today I have a returning guest. He was did remote with us. Now he's here live. We're just really glad to have him. He was down at Emory-Riddle University yesterday, and we're going to talk about that. Dennis Courtney, welcome to the show, Dennis.
Hey, thank you, Rory. How are you doing, man?
I enjoyed speaking with you at the university yesterday. It was very enlightening, and it's
It was a great visit.
Great to have you back. So, you know, at one point yesterday, we were sitting off just talking. It was for quite a while, and I really enjoyed the conversation, to be honest with you. And I kind of asked you just what was your goal for yesterday down in Emory-Riddle. So,
yeah.
And you just went off, and you were very, very passionate. So, if you could just explain what you were doing down there yesterday.
So, you know, I'm an alumni of Emory-Riddle, so it was kind of, it just full circle for me because, you know, you saw the kids on campus, ton of kids there, you know, really passionate about engineering, aeronautical, you know, in the aeronautical industry going into it. But you think about, you know, that even though there are a lot of kids there, that's a very small segment of the population. So what we do at STREAMWORKS and with Robot Drone League, this conversation started a long time ago, you know, being retired Navy, you know, and some of the things that kind of stick out to me, the high points are when I found out who is predominantly making up our manufacturing, our engineering workforce. Mm-hmm. And
who exactly is that?
Chinese and Indians.
Okay.
Right? So foreign nationals.
Yep.
The H-1B visa.
Sure. Well, for every engineering student in the United States, there's 10 in China.
Right, and it's 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we doing from an academic standpoint, from a STEM standpoint, to improve those numbers and give our citizens that opportunity to have really good jobs, especially in STEM fields? So, and, you know, you look at the math scores across the board. You know, we're 34th in the world in math. Mm-hmm. I think we can do better, and I don't want to. It's not the educators' fault. I mean, the educators are just overwhelmed and underpaid. However, what can we do from a grassroots movement, a community war, to go out and help these kids get to these jobs, whether they're blue collar or industry engineering? You know, the average, you know, looking at when you said, you know, the number of engineers, but I think Mike Rowe just posted something about, you know, for every 5 electricians and plumbers and welders that are retiring from the job force, only 2 are taking their place. Huge hole in our workforce. Mike
Rowe is a strong advocate for American manufacturing and workforce development, and for developing our youth and some of our disenfranchised youth. That, you know, he talks about, you know, technical training and apprenticeships. He's a very strong advocate. I really enjoy listening to him.
So yesterday was just full circle because we're partnering with several universities, several technical schools, you know, the 2-year tech trade schools, to really help kids go from K through 12 into post-secondary, because 75% of kids that are involved in some kind of STEM extracurricular have a higher probability of going into post-secondary and becoming a skilled tradesperson. That's what this is about. This is trying to point the kids into a model where they're going to go and get a career. So, you know, and my story kind of starts along those lines because I quit college in my 2nd year, ended up in the U.S. Navy. Best decision I ever had that happened to me. I didn't know it at the time because I was like, I'm going to go do the military for a little bit and try to, you know, find some traction. We have a
similar background.
Yes, we do.
So I started in college.
Yeah.
I dropped out and I served an apprenticeship in the Carpenters Union in New York.
Yeah.
And then I went into the Navy.
Right.
So for a lot of reasons, and you know, there's a lot of folks like us out there, and I've been fairly successful. It was a different road.
Right.
But you know, Mike Rowe talks about it, like you mentioned Mike Rowe. There's a stigma in this country, and I say this all the time, about vocational training. We've been pushing the 4-year degree program, and that's a good program, you know, but it's not for everybody.
Right.
And it obviously wasn't the path for me or for you. And we took a different path. Part of my goals with this show, and I was been asked, why did I do this? I really want to, reinvigorate and reshore manufacturing, but probably as much as important as that is, maybe slightly more important. I want to reach out to parents and tell them, there's other options besides the 4-year degree. There's vocational training, and I want to speak to those disenfranchised or those 18, 19-year-olds that are trying to figure it out. Right. And they know college isn't, for whatever reason, isn't in their roadmap. So that's a big part of why I do this. Speaking to those folks, and you and I are an example of it.
And that's part of the journey. In my journey, when I dropped out of college, I never will forget the conversation that my stepfather and my mom had with me. At 1 a.m.
I'm laughing. I remember the one with my father. He had an heavy Irish accent, and it might have been a little loud too. But.
Well, and that's this is exactly what happened. I think the journey, the stories are similar, and but that was back some time ago, obviously. But the only thing that I was really good at was the PE class that I was in college, selling the boats around the lake. So my stepfather said, "Well, that's the only damn thing you're good at. You need to go join the Navy." So 2 days later, I was in the Navy, and again, that was all too often we're missing out on that opportunity in the military too. Because if you look at aviation workforce and what the FAA is trying to do to bolster up the aviation workforce in our country, is we need to look at the military as an option too, because what you said, about 4-year college, only 25% of the kids coming out of high school really need to be looking at that 25% or that 4-year option.
And how many of those kids actually go to college and actually graduate? The numbers are
it's less than 10%. Yeah. So again, here's some of the statistics in our business that we're looking at that are alarming, because 9 million males, American males, are sitting at home right now playing video games. They're not in the workforce. They're sitting in the basement at some house that they don't own, they're not paying for, and they're playing video games. They're not in the workforce.
10, 15 years ago, our workforce participation was 67.5%.
Yeah.
Now that goes for retirees. Today it's 62.
Right.
Maybe it's a little higher.
Right.
And those are people that extra 5%. Those are people that are viable, employees that can be working, that for some reason are choosing not to.
Right. Well, and you look at the next decade, the numbers are going to just dramatically drop. It's a cliff. And until we do something, and again, going back to that grassroots movement in communities, and that's what we're doing at STREAMWORKS and with Robot Drone League, and we partner with all of them. You got First Robotics, you got Mate, Underwater Robotics, anything you can do to get a kid engaged in STEM, science and math. So I'll share a real quick story with you about one of our interns. I don't think you'll mind me mentioning his first name, is Gavin. And so Gavin was a 9th grade student coming into the high school, local high school, when we first started Robot Drone League and Underwater Robotics. And he scored a 17. He tells the story a lot better than I can, but he scored a 17 on his entry math test. And he was floored. He was like, man, I'm a failure. I don't know how to do math. And he had come from a homeschool background, and he was just horrified, that his whole future was going to be marked by that 117 score on his math. Well, I went up and I threw a box of parts on the table at the school, and I said, anybody want to join a robotics team? And him and about 20 other kids said, yeah, I want to do it. He was very interested. Out of that 20, only 2 stuck with it, and they ended up coming to work for me as interns. So, and I might get a little choked up talking about this, but this is a kid that not only flourished, but he hit a 34 on his ACT. He got a full ride scholarship to East Tennessee State University as a Roan Scholar.
That's something to get choked up about.
It is.
Those are great success stories.
And it wasn't me, but it was the initiative, the robotics initiative, that extracurricular activity, that hands-on experiential learning is what did it for him. And that's what does it for a lot of kids. And that's the success we found with hundreds, if not thousands of kids going through Robot Drone Week.
So you're taking basically drones, which a lot of kids, I mean, it's like eye candy, right?
Yeah, it's gamified.
It's gamified,
right.
and motivating them. And in the process, they're learning team building skills.
It's
they're learning
competition,
engineering.
you know?
They're learning, they're learning all those things. That's great.
Well, it's the behavior that we want to see in the workforce, right? We want to see collaboration, cooperation, communication. We want to, but at the end of the day, we want a high-end product, right? The only way you're going to get there is if you have good, deep-level competition where we're producing the best output. Sure. And so that's where, you know, a lot of these kids have never competed before, because remember, they're sitting in front of the video game or their cell phone, and they're in a silo. But if we can bring them out, and that's the cool thing about our events. You know, we just did one at University of Virginia at Wise this past Saturday. And then we did one prior to that in Murfreesboro. And the one thing I noticed when I'm out there looking at the audience, and you got several hundred people, grandparents, parents, siblings, and then the kids themselves going at it on these fields about the size of a pickleball court with robots and drones. The cool thing that I noticed that stuck out to me the most, it's a rock show, it's a party. However, none of the kids were on their cell phones. I think
that's pretty neat.
I think that, and it's the journey. And I always tell the kids, you know, the competition is just a culmination, man. We're going to have a party. We're going to have a good time. And yeah, there's going to be some awards, but not every kid's going to get an award.
It's kind of like a rock event, you know. So we have a mutual friend in Amelia Goulding, pardon me. And she introduced me to Vex, and I went to some events, and a lot of my staff come out and referee. And she was trying to get me to go for years. And I'm like, you know, okay, you know, it sounds great. And she said it was great. I went there, and I left. My feet were 6 inches off the ground. I mean, it's a rock show. The kids are amazing. And the sportsmanship, the passion, you know, the competitiveness, and it's like a rock show. I mean, you know, they do great. These events are absolutely amazing. You're right. Well, they're motivating.
And that's where, when we get back to, you know, why there's a stigma about a welder or a plumber or an electrician. We've got to normalize that, man, because we need these guys, and these are six-figure jobs. There should be no stigma about any of that.
I talk about that all the time. You know, if you go to STEM and you go into robotics and you go an engineering route, phenomenal. But, you know, there's PLCs in there, there's all that kind of stuff. You know, ladder logic, and today as we get more involved in robotics and manufacturing, you know, the PLC, we're innovating and creating new tools, and AI is creating all those. The PLC is still here, and it controls basically, you know, every device in a factory to a certain extent. The technicians to work on those and write that stuff, you know.
Exactly, the coding, the computer science programming, and that is key right there, because, you know, when I look out, and that's what we do at STREAMWORKS, is we offer professional development in robotics, teaching the educators how to go back into the classroom and teach robotics, which has that coding part. You know, Georgia Tech, we're partners with those guys too, and they do a really good job of trying to get out to the rural areas and bring in those teachers to teach the basics of computer science.
So I actually have some questions here.
Yeah, we're
going to get to them, but I really want to make that point. Those PLC guys, those and ladies, want to be careful there. They're technicians. They don't necessarily need to have a 4-year degree. No, there's some certifications out that help.
Advanced manufacturing, certification. Yeah, and
we need to look at that, and we need to get the parents on board with that.
Yes.
You know, we need to educate parents that, you know, these jobs, you said 6 figures, a lot of them are higher than 6 figures. Sure. As an employer, I wish I could get them around 6 figures. I could, you know, that's another story. They're good paying jobs. Manufacturing jobs pay 25 to 30% more than a national average.
That's right.
You know, so you know, when a factory comes to town and creates jobs, it lifts the whole community up, and the community flourishes, and it, you know, makes for prosperity. People working in factories, you know, in the technicians, they can buy that, they can afford the American dream, that home and raising a family. So, and that we need to let parents know that there is an alternative to that 4-year degree, and you don't have to take on that debt. And I've had many people talk about that.
Gosh, yeah.
So we talked about, you were down in Embry-Riddle yesterday, and you mentioned that you're alumni. So kind of a little bit, tell me your history there, and how did you arrive there?
Yeah, so, I wanted to ask you a question real quick. And when we talk about normalizing those jobs, what did your grandmother or your parents ever tell you when you're growing up? What do they want you to be, right? Probably the same thing that all of us have heard, go be a doctor or a lawyer, right? How many times have we heard that instead of, hey, you should go be a PLC technician, And I think that's where we're trying to get to. So, in my journey going into the Navy, I started off as an electrician, and then I said, I don't know if I want to do that, but that's cool. But I want to fly. I wanted to go and do the flight engineer thing. So that's what I did, and I stayed with that job for 24 years. But while I was in, I kept a promise to my grandmother is to finish my education that I had started before I joined. So I did that, and I'm so thankful for the U.S. Navy under scholarships for paying my way all the way up through a master's degree at Embry-Riddle. It's
another path.
Yeah, and well, that opened a lot of doors, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now had I not had that education, because it allowed me to go into different settings. I taught in college, and I fell in love with teaching, rather than being in the aviation industry, as a consultant or as a project manager. But when I started teaching, that's when I was like, that's when all this STEM stuff started, because I could see I was really doing some benefit. Anybody put an airplane together, right? But
no, not anybody, but it's a skill.
But putting a kid together for a good plan, a good purpose, a good map, that is special. I mean, that is sensational. And it's not a one-man job. It is a community, that grassroots movement of parents, teachers, community members, leaders, manufacturing too. I applaud whenever I hear stories about Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz or any of these industries bringing in these community efforts to help with the education process. I mean, that's what's sensational, and I think we need more of that, and it needs to be normalized. Just like how many soccer matches do you see on any given Saturday at the YMCA's? We should be seeing robotics events every Saturday, getting these kids to where it's fun, it's engaging, it's gamified, of course, because we're competing against video games. So we've got to bring our A game when we're trying to get our kids' interest, because this is what's going to help develop them in that experiential learning into that skill sets needed in the workforce. That's what it's about.
All right. RDL, Robot Drone League.
Yeah, Robot
give me some particulars. Give me the lay of the land there.
Well, just to give credit to Dr. Scooter Willis down in Florida Atlantic University. He's the guy that came up with it a number of years ago, and then it was gifted to us. So STREAMWORKS, we started a Robot Drone League, and kind of a blessing in disguise. We started it a year before the pandemic happened. So our game kind of got put into a can, and that was our first year of really getting serious about the game and doing sanctioned events. We called it Dragonfly, so it was based on a NASA model of launching a spacecraft up to Titan, and dropping a drone from a robot and being able to go out and do missions. So that it was kind of centered around that. Since then, we've had 5 different games. This year it's called Mineshaft, so you can go check it out, robotdroneleague.com.
How many events a year do you hold?
Well, so this year we've done 8.
8 events.
8 events through the Southeast United States. Then we'll have our national championship at East Tennessee State University on January 25th. So I hope you come up there. Because,
I'm committed. I'm going to be there.
January 24th. Try to come January 24th. That is the fun pizza social that we have that night before. We let the teams get into the field, take measurements. I mean, these kids are using their tape measures, and we do everything in metric because we're scientists and engineers, and they're calculating, they're doing their code so they can, because we want them to attempt to run their robots in autonomous through coding alone. It's worth quadruple the amount of points. So the matches are 10-minute matches. The first minute is autonomous. Everything has to be in code.
So I'm sitting here, and I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking there's 2 people I want to bring with me.
Bring them.
One is a young man. He's 35 years old now. He's one of the head trainers, robotics trainers at Tesla, and he was an electrician.
Yeah.
And then went and got an associate's degree, and he did things kind of similar to us and worked himself up. And I've known him since he was a young man, and he comes out to events and stuff. He would love to see that. I have a nephew who's 12 years old, and he's brilliant.
You got to bring him.
He's brilliant, and I'm sitting there going, I need to expose him to this.
That's right. And you said the magic word. It's about exposure. A lot of these kids don't even know these exist.
So I'm going to get a hotel room, and I might have a couple of people sleeping on the floor. I'm not sleeping on the floor, but yeah, I'm sitting at and that's what it is. It's about, and I'll mention his name. Josh McMillan is out at Tesla, and he called me when he got the job at Tesla and was so excited. I knew people in Tesla, and so I was just really happy for him. But he's giving back now. People helped him. I was one of the people that helped him. But now he's about helping people and training, and he's passionate about training and passionate about what he does. It's those are the people like you that did for a while and now really want to share that knowledge and to help the next generation. And that's twofold. We're actually helping young people that get where we need. We're also serving another need, and we talk in workforce development. Mike Rowe talks about it. We're at 62% labor participation, down from 67. And manufacturing is growing exponentially from reshoring efforts and some nanocent technology like the EV market is new, and data centers are exploding. As far as data centers go, the UK and the US are the leaders there. So we're building data centers faster than we can. We're building, EV is coming here, and we're bringing reshoring some manufacturing, particularly semiconductor. We have a 3.8 deficit in workforce by 2030. I think in the past 18 months or so, the pendulum's starting to swing in the other direction, but it's not, we have a lot of work cut out there.
That's the key, is a lot of work.
So nationals.
Yes, sir.
January 25th.
January 25th at East Tennessee State University.
How many?
In the Dome.
How many competitors and how
we'll
many
have
teams?
40 teams, so it's roughly between 400 and 500 kids, students, plus parents, and so it's going to be crowded. We're hosting it in the Dome, which is a football field, indoor football field stadium at East Tennessee State University. This is where they have Bands of America and graduations, and it's a huge facility. And the reason why we're in there, because formerly on campus we were at the called the Center for Physical Activity. It was 4 gyms put together, and Dr. Brian Nolan came in for the opening remarks, and he took a look. He said, "No, we got to move this to somewhere else. This is too many people in here." And plus it's got the stadium seating, so it's going to be super cool. We're super excited that we get to go into the Dome and host the Nationals there, and so it's going to be a bigger rock show than what it has been.
So you kind of inherited RDL. You said it was kind of gifted to you from your other endeavor, STREAMWORKS.
Yes.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
So break down STREAMWORKS for us.
Yeah, so STREAMWORKS is an interesting entity, and again, it goes back into that same model. We're trying to have that grassroots movement to help support communities, help the schools, help kids, give them an outlet where they can come in and build a robot or do some kind of STEM project. Maybe it's coding, maybe it's just putting together beads, for codes, summer activities, summer STEM camps, professional development. We have teachers that come in and learn how to build the robot so they can go back into their classroom and build the robot. In our advanced series, we also have a 3D printing professional development workshop where we bring in some of the best in the industry for 3D printing. They give an actual 3-day workshop building a 3D printer from the ground up, and then that teacher takes it back into the classroom and uses it to teach those kids, their students, advanced manufacturing. So, but STREAMWORKS is, it's some of the things that we're doing with STREAMWORKS, and we're looking for our partners too with, the aviation workforce development. Is how you touched on something earlier about internships. building those relationships up in the community with your local manufacturers and using that talent pool and overcoming some of the blocks, to get the kids in there. Sometimes, the factory says, no, you can't take them till they're 18. What can we do to get them there when they're 15, when they're so impressionable, and keep them on track in that 3-year period when they're adolescents in order to get them into that workforce? So that's some of the tricks, and a lot of companies like Bell Helicopter, very interested in what we're doing so that they can, and here's a little trick and a tip for everybody, is when we hire our interns at STREAMWORKS, the way I recruit them is I go and I look for the leaders on the robotics teams, and I give them an opportunity to come work for us and be a summer camp counselor for STEM education. Or in some instances, we take our interns and they end up running our stores, which we provide STEM kits worldwide. So these they start off as high school students, but then they eventually end up in college. We've got several of them that are at East Tennessee State University and Georgia Tech, and so they all work in, some of them are remote, they're doing animation, they're doing computer science, some are actually physically putting wires and PVC and different motors and stuff into kits, and then we ship them off. So that opportunity and having that on your resume is really, really strong fodder, right? But having those relationships with your manufacturers and your communities, that grassroots movement, when that HR guy is like, man, I need some computer science guys, but I want to make sure, one, this kid's not going to show up in house shoes. They're not going to show up in pajamas. They're going to be ready to work. They're not going to call with a bunch of excuses. Mm-hmm. That's our kids. That's what we're trying to produce on these teams, that gamification. And
that's what we need to teach them about you.
Tuck your shirt in, dude. Yeah. And seriously, that's what it's all about.
They can call us old fuddy duddies. I have a pet peeve about tucking in shirts at work. So,
I know. I'm that way too. And sometimes I know it might not be the trend, but leave
your skateboard at home.
Well, it's about eye contact. Shake a hand. Be professional.
Those are things. Those are things that really need to be taught. I'm sorry. I'm older, but it speaks volumes. The ability to look somebody in the eye and give the old firm handshake and articulate and introduce yourself. You don't have to have a lot to say, but that comes natural to some people. It needs to be taught to others.
Right.
And we're kind of losing that a little bit.
Yeah.
Saying hello and burying your face in the phone does not impress people at work.
The digital communication doesn't. You take out the human part, and I think we're definitely missing.
We sound like a bunch of old guys.
I know we are,
but you know what? But I'm still hiring.
Human.
And I'm still looking at that.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with you having a chat, and sitting down and having a conversation, because this treadmill that every human is on in the year 2024, almost 2025, is going so fast.
Well, when I talk to young people, I talk about presenting yourself properly, looking people in the eye, talking, and every opportunity you take a training. It's like, I'm related because, I serve a carpenter apprenticeship. Every training you get, you're taking another tool and you put it in your box.
That's right.
You put another thing on your resume. Right. Every training you can get, train. Always work at making yourself better. Ask questions. Volunteer at work to take on tasks. Right. Be a team member. And learning in the team dynamics.
Right.
How to function in a team. There's a time to lead the team, and there's a time to be the number 2 guy or contributor. Right. And having the ego to know when. Those are all things we need to be teaching our stuff. So, you got very passionate there talking about your young intern and said, he did it all on his own. I'm going to disagree with you. All right? Yeah. And I've had several people on this show. We need champions. Yeah. We need champions to champion workforce development. We need champions to lead these efforts, and you are one of those, and I applaud you, and I thank you for doing that, and we just need more folks like you. And I am really looking forward to nationals.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of
and
fun.
having you back on. I think we need to have you on one of our panel discussions. Yeah,
Absolutely,
conversations.
yeah, absolutely. I need to introduce you to some more folks too. There's a lot of people out here that are trying to throw blocks for these kids to run it.
Well, you know what? And that was one benefit of this show I've been doing in the time. I knew I had a really good network that was working on workforce development.
Yeah.
But since I started this, it's grown exponentially. I've been introduced to a lot of folks, and I think that's part of it. We need to start
The community.
We need to start connecting. I'm going to mention Terry Iversons and folks like you and Amelia and Chris Budahaas and a plethora of other folks. We need to start pulling these people together and having conversations, and we're stronger as a group.
Well, and thank you for having me on, because your platform is helping us launch and get the word out what we're trying to do, because having your connections and again that community, so you're helping us spread that, and I appreciate that a lot more
That's
than
the goal.
you know.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
all
you.
right. Thanks.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you.